Billionaire met a boy who resembled him, then discovered he was the son of his ex-girlfriend. From the glamorous skyscrapers of Manhattan to the whispers in every exclusive nightclub, stories about billionaire Grayson Lockhart seemed endless, but none could ever have predicted the twist that would bring him face to face with a secret that could topple his empire and redefine his life forever. In a crowded plaza one rainy afternoon, Grayson glimpsed a small boy whose eyes mirrored his own. Curiosity sparked, questions arose, and in that single electrifying moment, a hidden truth tore through Grayson's well-ordered existence. No press coverage, no rumor mill, and no scandal had prepared the world or Grayson himself for the explosive discovery that this child was his. Grayson Lockhart's life had always been about forward momentum. He built vast towers in real estate, struck deals at opulent dinners with Middle Eastern princes, and jetted from Singapore to Los Angeles to Paris in the same week to finalize international collaborations. Despite this hyper-driven lifestyle, he hadn't always been the cold, calculating businessman some believed him to be. Years ago, before the board meetings and the billion-dollar net worth, Grayson's heart belonged to one woman, Aurora Middleton. They met at Columbia University. Grayson was a finance major with big dreams, devouring textbooks and forging connections at every opportunity. Aurora studied art history, her soul brimming with creativity and wanderlust. Their worlds collided in an elective philosophy course. He remembered how her eyes flickered with a spark of curiosity during intense classroom debates, how she sketched detailed, hauntingly beautiful sketches on the back of her notebook while the professor droned on about existentialism. In Aurora, Grayson saw color and wonder that provided an escape from the rigid confines of economics and bottom lines. For 3 transformative years, their love story blossomed. They explored hidden corners of New York City, roamed the galleries of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and stayed up nights on the campus lawn, dreaming about the future. Aurora once confided that she wanted to open an art studio for underprivileged kids, a safe haven where they could find self-expression. Grayson dreamed of launching his own real estate firm, one that would tower over the competition. Their differing ambitions complemented each other, forming a magnetic bond. But as senior year ended, the real world beckoned with unrelenting demands. While Aurora sought a more intimate life, hoping Grayson would stay by her side and nurture their shared passions, he took a job at Goldman Sachs, diving into the cutthroat environment of high finance. Late-night meetings and overseas assignments left their relationship gasping for air. Aurora felt neglected, overshadowed by Grayson's thirst for power and success. Eventually, a tearful argument sealed their fate. They parted ways, both heartbroken but too proud to repair the damage. Years went by in a blink. Grayson rose to meteoric prominence, establishing Lockhart International with major properties in cities like Dubai, Tokyo, and London. Meanwhile, Aurora faded from his life like a softly closed door. He didn't hear from her again, nor did he look back. For him, burying memories was easier than wrestling with them. Little did he know that one choice made in those final days at Columbia had forged a bond. He would one day have to face unraveling secrets kept hidden for far too long. Grayson Lockhart was now a legend in the world of real estate and finance. His name floated effortlessly among the richest of the rich. Gossip columns placed him alongside tech tycoons and oil magnates, lauding his unrivaled risk-taking abilities and philanthropic efforts. His apartment in 157, overlooking Central Park, was as much a status symbol as it was a fortress, tall glass panels shielding him from the clamorous energy of New York while allowing him to gaze upon the city he had conquered. Yet behind the polished veneer, Grayson wrestled with a perpetual hollowness. He prided himself on discipline, never allowing personal tribulations to creep into board meetings or weigh him down during negotiations. His daily routine was like clockwork: morning workouts with a personal trainer, an hour of strategic planning with his executive assistant, followed by a tightly orchestrated schedule of investment summits, site visits, and press conferences. Newspapers championed him as a visionary. Those close to him whispered that he had sacrificed too many relationships on the altar of ambition. Most of his nights ended with solitary dinners in top-tier restaurants. If he needed company, he had fleeting relationships with socialites who appreciated the glitz but never truly penetrated his emotional barriers. He occasionally visited his half-sister, Lydia Lockhart, a pediatric surgeon at Mount Sinai Hospital. Lydia alone saw glimpses of the man he had once been, a caring soul, deeply wounded by regrets he never discussed. It was on a particularly stormy afternoon that Lydia convinced him to join her at a charity event for children. It was a small-scale fundraiser hosted by a local community center in Brooklyn. Ordinarily, Grayson would have sent a check and called it a day, but Lydia's eyes had brimmed with such earnestness that he reluctantly agreed. Wearing a sharp-tailored suit and accompanied by a few bodyguards, he arrived at a humble auditorium filled with handmade decorations, bright banners, and excited children. Amid the swirl of lively music and enthusiastic chatter, Grayson felt like an outsider in his tailored perfection. He circulated half-heartedly, greeting sponsors and community leaders. Lydia teased him for checking his phone too often. The tension in his chest melted a bit each time he saw a child giggle at the volunteers' antics on stage. Then came the turning point that would forever alter Grayson's reality. A boy, small for his age, with deep brown hair and eyes of striking grey, was drawing by himself at a corner table. Something about the boy, his posture, or perhaps the intensity in his gaze, stirred a memory in Grayson's heart. Intrigued, he found himself walking toward the table, forgetting about the phone in his hand, the associates awaiting him, even the unstoppable drive of his next business venture. He could never have guessed that in mere minutes an inexplicable recognition would spark. This boy, with his serious expression and intense grey eyes, resembled someone hauntingly familiar: himself. Grayson approached the boy slowly, feeling an uncharacteristic flutter in his chest. It wasn't just that the child's eyes mirrored his own unique shade of grey. There was a certain dignity, a quiet concentration in the boy's stance, shoulders slightly hunched over the table, pencils arranged in meticulous lines that mirrored the precision Grayson used in his own life. Dismissing it as mere coincidence, he forced a polite smile. "Hi there," Grayson said gently. "What are you drawing?" The boy glanced up, his expression guarded. "A building," he answered, voice soft yet resonant. "I'm drawing the community center, but I want to add a bigger rooftop garden." Grayson nodded, momentarily captivated by the child's seriousness. The piece showed not just a basic outline, but intricate details: a swirling roof design, windows with flower pots, walkways lined with miniature shrubs. The architectural ambition startled him. It was too advanced for a child who couldn't have been more than 7 or 8. "You have quite an eye," Grayson remarked, fighting the urge to ask personal questions. His gaze flicked from the boy's face to the intricacies of the sketch. "Do you like buildings?" "They tell stories," the boy said quietly, looking back down. "My mom says I'm good at noticing details." There it was, a casual mention of his mother. Grayson felt a mild wave of relief. In his world, children rarely existed without some context: a starlet's adoption, a board member's weekend custody arrangement, or philanthropic visits to orphanages. This was a typical scenario, he told himself. The resemblance had to be a coincidence. Still, he couldn't resist the next question. "What's your name?" Grayson asked. forcing a note of warmth into his voice, something that rarely came naturally in his business environment. "His name is Gabriel," someone answered from behind. A middle-aged volunteer in a bright orange t-shirt smiled as she joined them. "He's one of our most talented kids." Practically a budding architect at 9 years old. Grayson's chest tightened. 9. The boy was 9. He found himself mentally tracing timelines. 9 years since, he pushed the thought aside, cursing himself for getting carried away by illusions. Yet his curiosity refused to wane. "How often does he come here?" Grayson inquired, trying to maintain a casual tone. "He attends our after-school art programs whenever possible," the volunteer explained. "He's quiet, but always sweet. His mum's name is Aurora Middleton. Perhaps you've heard of her? She volunteers sometimes." The name sliced through Grayson's composure. Aurora Middleton. The Aurora from his college days. The Aurora he had loved so deeply, his heartbeat thundered in his ears. Memories of late-night whispers, campus strolls, and tearful goodbyes rushed in like a tidal wave. Suddenly, all the coincidences lined up in a dreadful clarity. The boy's age, the boy's eyes, the reference to a mother named Aurora. A swirl of questions battered Grayson's mind. Had Aurora kept this child a secret? Was the boy truly his son? How could he have gone nearly a decade without knowing? He nodded mechanically, barely hearing his own murmured thanks to the volunteer. Gabriel, unperturbed by this exchange, continued to draw. Grayson stood frozen, the entire breadth of his business empire feeling insignificant compared to the possibility that he might have a son. Grayson didn't remember the drive back to his penthouse. His mind churned with images of Gabriel's serious face and Aurora's radiant smile from years past. The first order of business was a quiet, frantic investigation. He discreetly asked his head of security, Reuben Chambers, once a top investigator for the NYPD, to look into Aurora Middleton's recent history, her address, her job, any family ties. Grayson insisted that his request remain off the record. The last thing he wanted was a media circus. The following afternoon, Reuben arrived at Grayson's office. "I've got something," he said quietly, sliding a slim folder across the desk. "Aurora Middleton lives in Park Slope, Brooklyn, working part-time at the Brooklyn Museum of Art. She's also listed as the founder of a small NGO called Colorful Dreams Studio. No mention of a husband or partner. The boy, Gabriel Middleton, is listed as her son. He was born around 9 years ago, shortly after you and Aurora would have parted ways." Every word felt like a cold wind, buffeting Grayson's heart. He opened the folder. There were photos. Aurora in a modest coat, leading a group of children through a small gallery, her smile as radiant as he remembered. Another snapshot showed Gabriel clinging to her arm as they crossed a street. Gabriel's head was turned, but Grayson recognized the determined tilt of his chin. That evening, without calling ahead, Grayson found himself standing on the stoop of Aurora's modest brownstone. A wrought iron railing and potted plants lined the front steps, reflecting an almost bohemian charm so very Aurora. The door opened to reveal her, older now, with subtle lines around her eyes but still beautiful. A flicker of shock passed over her features when she recognized him. "Grayson?" she asked, her voice trembling with surprise. "How? Why are you here?" He struggled to maintain his composure. Rage and betrayal warred with the flood of old affection. "We need to talk," he said, stepping inside before she could respond. The cozy living room, decorated with paintings, throw pillows, and a messy stack of children's books, felt worlds apart from his sterile penthouse. Aurora closed the door slowly, her hand lingering on the knob. "You found out?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Yes," Grayson replied tightly, glancing around for any sign of Gabriel. "How long did you plan on keeping him a secret?" Her eyes brimmed with tears. I never intended it to be a secret. But after we broke up, I found out I was pregnant. I tried to reach you, but you were always traveling, changing phone numbers, diving deeper into your career. Eventually, I just decided to raise him on my own. 1,000 questions pounded at Grayson's skull. Why not tell me later, when I was settled? I would have done something. You were everywhere in the media, forging alliances, building an empire, Aurora said, tears threatening to spill down her cheeks. I wasn't sure how you'd react, or if you'd even believe me. I was scared you'd take him away. I wanted him to have a childhood, not become a pawn in a billionaire's world. Grayson's anger cracked at the edges, replaced by a storm of guilt, sorrow, and protectiveness for a child he had never known he had. I need to see him, he said, his voice almost pleading. Aurora nodded, letting out a shaky breath. He's upstairs, asleep. I'll call you tomorrow so we can talk this through. Please, Grayson, for Gabriel's sake, we have to do this carefully. And with that, he left the brownstone, heart pounding, uncertain whether to be furious or heartbroken or both. The next few days passed in a haze. Grayson, a man used to swift deals and immediate results, felt hopelessly paralyzed. He confided in Lydia, his sister, who listened with a mix of shock and empathy. "A nephew," she whispered, eyes glistening. "I can't believe Aurora never told you." Grayson shrugged, swirling a tumbler of scotch in his hand. "But why would she?" he muttered. "I was so absorbed in building my empire, skipping from city to city. Even if she tried, it's plausible I missed the call or email. I changed my number twice during those first years on Wall Street." Lydia placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "What matters now is how you handle this. You have a son, Gray, a real, living, breathing child who needs you whether he knows it or not." Her words echoed in his mind long after she left. He spent hours staring at the city skyline from his penthouse, imagining how different life could have been if he'd chosen love over ambition. In a sudden burst of determination, he arranged a meeting with Aurora for the coming Saturday at a nearby cafe, requesting that Gabriel be present. He needed to lay eyes on his son again, to start bridging the 9-year gap that stretched between them. Aurora arrived first, guiding Gabriel by the hand into the cafe's sunlit interior. His eyes were wide, taking in the rows of pastries and the swirl of cappuccino foam from the baristas. Grayson stood as they approached, heart hammering. "Hello," he greeted quietly, forcing a calm he didn't feel. Gabriel looked at him, brow furrowed. "You're that man from the community center." His voice carried a child's curiosity and a hint of suspicion. "Yes, I am," Grayson said, keeping his tone gentle. "I wanted to say hello again." He held out his hand, hesitating when Gabriel just looked at it. Eventually, the boy extended his own, their fingers grasping in a moment of tentative connection. Aurora offered a small, nervous smile. The three of them sat at a corner table. After a few awkward moments of silence, Grayson cleared his throat. Would you like something to eat, Gabriel?" "A cupcake, maybe." "Chocolate chip muffin," the boy mumbled, glancing at his mother for approval. Aurora nodded, and Grayson signaled a waiter. As they waited for their order, Grayson tried to talk to Gabriel about school, about his favorite art styles, about anything that could break the ice. But each question felt stilted. The boy answered politely, casting uncertain glances at Aurora. Grayson realized with a painful jolt that children sense tension, and Gabriel undoubtedly sensed the undercurrent swirling around this entire scenario. Finally, Aurora spoke up, her tone gentle yet firm. "Gabriel, I'd like you to know something very important." She paused, voice catching. "This is Grayson Lockhart. He's your father." A hush fell over the table, punctuated by the espresso machine's hiss. Gabriel's eyes widened, shifting from Aurora to Grayson. Confusion, shock, maybe even a flicker of relief. His expression seemed to hold a swirl of emotions. Grayson felt tears burn in his eyes, but he blinked them back. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way." he whispered, reaching for Gabriel's hand. I didn't know. I promise you, I didn't know. The weight of those 9 missing years pressed down, and in that moment, Grayson Lockhart, the billionaire with the world at his feet, realized just how powerless he truly was when it came to matters of the heart. Amid the emotional upheaval, life refused to slow down. Corporate matters demanded Grayson's attention with relentless urgency. An international consortium from Dubai wanted to invest a significant sum in Lockhart International, eyeing a piece of his next mega-project, a commercial complex with a groundbreaking eco-friendly design. Negotiations had been delicate, and at the slightest hint of personal instability, the deal could crumble, costing billions. Grayson's usual confidence faltered under the weight of the revelations about Gabriel. So he did what he had always done. He compartmentalized. The father in him wanted to be present for every breath, every heartbeat of this new relationship, but the CEO in him had responsibilities to shareholders, employees, and a global empire. He found himself juggling pressing financial calls and silent heartbreak, with neither side conceding any ground. One morning, his executive assistant, Cassandra Park, delivered troubling news. "Sir, there's a rumor circulating in some industry circles, something about you having a secret child. I'm not sure where it originated, but the tabloids might pick it up." Instantly, Grayson's protective instincts flared. "Shut it down," he snapped, hands clenched. "We can't let them drag Gabriel into the public eye. Issue denials if you have to, or non-committal statements. I won't let gossip vultures exploit him." Cassandra nodded, though her gaze carried concern. "Are you all right, Mr. Lockhart?" "I'm fine," Grayson answered curtly, signaling an end to the conversation. But he was far from fine. Every fiber of his being bristled at the idea of the media swarming his new and fragile connection with Gabriel. Meanwhile, Aurora started receiving cryptic phone calls at her NGO. Once, a journalist showed up, claiming to be writing a piece on community art programs, but quickly steering the conversation to her relationship with Grayson Lockhart. Panicked, Aurora called Grayson. "I can't do this. I won't let them hound Gabriel. You have to help us." Grayson gritted his teeth. "I'm doing everything I can. We'll handle it." And he meant it. With his resources, he managed to silence a few tabloids, paying them not to release any story related to his personal life. But rumors still lingered like sharks, circling the possibility of a sensational scoop. Yet the biggest challenge came from inside his own company. Frederick Jameson, a longtime board member who felt overshadowed by Grayson's success, seized on the news as a way to undermine the CEO's position. Lockhart's personal scandal could harm the company's reputation, Jameson argued in a private meeting. "Investors are skittish about unpredictability. We need stability." In Grayson's world of wealth and power, any sign of vulnerability was a weakness to be exploited. For the first time, fatherhood gave him an authentic vulnerability. It enraged him that something so pure, his bond with Gabriel, could become a pawn in corporate chess matches. But business had always been a battlefield. If Grayson wanted to secure his company's future, he would have to fight off challenges within and fend off the hungry media, all while trying to form a real relationship with the son he had only just discovered. And that, as he was quickly learning, demanded more energy than any merger or hostile takeover he had ever faced. The swirl of challenges felt unending, and the tension between Grayson and Aurora simmered like a kettle perpetually on the verge of boiling over. In the midst of corporate crises, Grayson found himself consumed by the puzzle of Gabriel's life, the boy's likes, his needs, his dreams. Late at night, Grayson pored over the drawings Gabriel had left at the cafe, feeling closer to the son he barely knew. One evening, as Grayson settled into his penthouse after a grueling day of negotiations, He received a frantic call from Aurora. "He's gone," she said, voice trembling. "Gabriel ran away from home. He heard us arguing last night, and I guess he left a note saying he wants to figure things out on his own." Fear punched Grayson in the gut. The idea of his 9-year-old wandering New York City alone was terrifying. Without hesitation, he summoned Reuben Chambers to organize a discreet search operation. Helicopters, an army of security personnel, that was Grayson's first instinct, but Aurora insisted on a more delicate approach. "We can't scare him. Please, Grayson, think carefully. He's not used to your world and all that power." With a heavy heart, Grayson agreed. They combed through each lead places Gabriel frequented, the art studio, the community center, nearby playgrounds. Hours ticked by with agonizing slowness. Aurora's eyes were red from worry and crying, and Grayson felt helpless in a way he never had before. In a stroke of insight, Lydia suggested searching the rooftop of the very community center where Gabriel loved to draw. "He's always talking about buildings and views, right?" she pointed out. Sure enough, they found him huddled beneath a makeshift cardboard fort on the rooftop garden, tear tracks on his cheeks. Aurora rushed to gather him in her arms, but the boy pulled away at first, shooting a frightened glance at Grayson. His small voice cracked. "I'm tired of people fighting about me. I just want to draw. I don't want to ruin anyone's life." Grayson swallowed the lump in his throat. Kneeling down, he spoke gently. "You're not ruining anything, Gabriel. I promise you, none of this is your fault." Tears finally spilled from Gabriel's eyes as he let Aurora hold him. Grayson stood back, realizing the boy needed his mother's comfort. Eventually, Gabriel looked up at Grayson, guilt and fear etched into his small features. "I heard people say you're too busy and too rich to care about a kid, so I figured it'd be easier if I just left." Pain stabbed Grayson's heart. He bent down, resting a hand on Gabriel's shoulder. "Don't you ever think that," he whispered fervently. "I'm sorry if I made you feel that way. We're going to figure this out, I promise." In that tender moment, the city lights glowed in the distance. A father, a mother, and a child, forming a portrait of fractured love. Despite the heartbreak, something magical was beginning to take shape, a fragile bond that could either become a fortress of trust or crumble under the relentless pressure of secrets. The rooftop incident served as a catalyst, compelling Grayson and Aurora to finally communicate. With Gabriel nestled in bed later that night, Aurora invited Grayson to the kitchen of her brownstone. The warm glow of a single pendant lamp illuminated the tension between them. The aroma of chamomile tea floated around, but neither of them felt calm. "I'm sorry," Aurora began, voice trembling. "I never should have let it get this far. But the truth is, the day you left for your job, everything changed. I felt abandoned, and when I found out I was pregnant, I was scared to face you. You were already on the cusp of greatness. I didn't want to be the one to take that away." Grayson sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I never meant to abandon you. I thought we just needed space. I was so ambitious, so blinded by success. I failed to realize what truly mattered." Their gazes locked, memories of whispered campus confessions and starry nights flooding back. For a moment, they were two young people, again naive, hopeful. The clock in the corner ticked softly, measuring a silence brimming with unresolved feelings. Grayson broke the hush with a soft question. "Can we fix this?" Aurora's eyes glistened with tears. "We have to for Gabriel. I don't want him hurt, and I don't want you or me living in regret." A flicker of hope warmed Grayson's chest, but it was quickly overshadowed by the weight of looming challenges. Aurora's trust in him was tenuous, and the business side of his life was in upheaval, with Frederick Jameson and others salivating over any weakness. To complicate matters, old resentments lingered between him and Aurora, and forging a united front for Gabriel's sake felt as precarious as balancing on a tightrope. Still, they agreed on one thing: Gabriel's well-being came first. Over the following weeks, they navigated parent-teacher conferences together. They took him to an architectural exhibit at the Museum of Modern Art, where Gabriel eagerly sketched entire cityscapes in his notebook, blissfully unaware of the tension simmering beneath his parents' polite conversation. The city tabloids remained watchful, sniffing around for any sign of scandal, but Grayson's legal team managed to keep them at bay. In tentative baby steps, a semblance of family life began to emerge. Grayson carved out specific hours in his schedule to spend with Gabriel, helping him with homework, taking him to soccer practice. At first, it was painfully awkward. The father he wanted to be was light years away from the father he could be right now. Still, each shared laugh or genuine smile felt like a victory. But as the weeks wore on, Aurora's guarded nature re-emerged. She questioned Grayson's ability to maintain stability, especially once the immediate crisis subsided and the lure of new international ventures returned. "What happens when the next big deal calls you to Hong Kong for months?" she'd ask in tense moments. Will Gabriel become an afterthought again? Grayson couldn't deny the possibility. His empire was insatiable, always demanding more expansions, more deals, more triumphs. Yet, for the first time, Grayson Lockhart felt an unshakable need to fight not just for a profit margin, but for love, and he wasn't sure if reconciliation would hold or if another betrayal was just around the corner. One crisp autumn evening, Aurora arranged for Gabriel to stay at a friend's house. She invited Grayson over with a cryptic phone call, her voice thick with something he couldn't name: anxiety, perhaps desperation. He arrived with a mixture of hope and dread, stepping into the same cozy living room he now associated with a family he longed to protect. Aurora stood by the fireplace, her eyes tracing the flames. She looked fragile yet determined, arms crossed as though she needed the barrier. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. "We need to talk about something I've been hiding." A chill snaked up Grayson's spine. He had assumed all major secrets were out in the open. What else could there be? She inhaled shakily, then motioned for him to sit on the sofa. Sitting beside him, she picked at a loose thread on her cardigan. "Do you remember, right after graduation, when I visited you in your dorm room? I tried to tell you something important that night, but we ended up arguing." He did remember. He had been packing for an internship in London, excited and fueled by a sense of invincibility. Aurora showed up, teary-eyed, and said she had news, but the conversation quickly dissolved into accusations of neglect. He never gave her a chance to finish. She squeezed her eyes shut, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I was coming to tell you I was pregnant. You were about to leave for London, so I left in anger and fear. When I tried reaching you after, your phone was disconnected. I wrote emails, letters, but they were returned. I even called your old job, but they said you'd moved on. Eventually, I convinced myself you didn't want to hear from me if you even remembered me." Grayson felt as if he'd been sucker-punched. "All these years, you believed I just ignored you?" Aurora wiped her face. "You seemed so set on forging your path. I was terrified you'd view the pregnancy as a burden. So I went on alone, found a small studio apartment, and worked odd jobs to support Gabriel. It was hard, Grayson." Her voice trembled with old pain. "I fought through rent bills, hospital visits, everything alone. My parents live in Florida, and they never approved of me having a child without a husband. For a while, I was truly alone." Tears burned in Grayson's eyes. He gathered her trembling hands in his. "I'm sorry," he murmured, words failing to express the magnitude of his regret. "I was ignorant, arrogant even. I never tried to see beyond my career. I lost the chance to be there for you, for Gabriel." Their gazes met, a profound sadness. filling the space between them. The confession revealed more than just a hidden truth. It laid bare the heartbreak, the fear, and the pride that had kept them apart. For a moment, time seemed suspended, and they both recognized the immensity of what was lost. At length, Aurora said, "I'm telling you this because we need a fresh start for Gabriel's sake, and maybe for us, if that's even possible." Grayson pulled her into a gentle embrace, feeling the steady pulse of her heart. His voice cracked as he replied, "I want that. More than anything, I'll do whatever it takes to rebuild what we lost." Under the quiet hum of the fireplace, two wounded souls finally shared the truth. The question now was whether honesty could mend the scars of a decade, or if their reunion was destined to be just another shattered dream. While Grayson and Aurora navigated their complicated history, Gabriel's own struggles quietly intensified. He found himself torn between the comforting routine he'd always shared with his mother and the thrilling promise of a father he had never known. At school, classmates gossiped about him being that rich man's son, and teachers treated him with a mix of curiosity and extra caution. During art sessions, his sketches grew more intricate and moody. The bright cityscapes he once favored morphed into towering structures overshadowed by dark clouds. When his art teacher, Miss Rodriguez, gently asked if he was okay, Gabriel shrugged. He wasn't sure how to explain the swirl of hope, confusion, and fear in his 9-year-old heart. One afternoon, Grayson picked Gabriel up from school in a sleek black sedan. It was a new experience for the boy, who was more accustomed to taking the subway or walking with Aurora. Gabriel felt a rush of excitement, but also a pang of guilt, worried that his mother might think he was getting spoiled by Grayson's lifestyle. "How was class?" Grayson asked as the driver navigated through congested streets. "Okay," Gabriel mumbled, staring out the window. Grayson cleared his throat, sensing the tension. "I was thinking we could grab a snack and then head to a bookstore. I want to pick up some art books you might like." Gabriel glanced at him, eyes momentarily lighting up. "That sounds cool," he admitted, but just as a smile threatened to break through, his gaze dropped. "Mom says we shouldn't let you spend too much money on us." A flicker of hurt crossed Grayson's features. "Money is not the issue here, Gabriel. I just want to do something nice for you." They ended up at a quaint bookstore in Greenwich Village, leafing through glossy pages of architectural marvels. Gabriel's excitement was palpable as he ran his fingers over photos of Frank Lloyd Wright's masterpieces. Yet every time Grayson attempted to connect, mentioning how he once worked on a building's blueprint or offering to buy a special limited edition volume, Gabriel's expression turned guarded. Later, as Grayson dropped Gabriel off at the brownstone, Aurora stepped out to meet them. She thanked Grayson politely, but Gabriel lingered on the sidewalk. He looked from Aurora to Grayson, tears threatening to spill. "Can't we all just live together?" he blurted, voice cracking with emotion. Aurora's face paled and Grayson's heart sank. They exchanged a glance heavy with unspoken considerations. The question was heartbreakingly simple. From a child's perspective, why not just become a family again? Aurora crouched down beside Gabriel. "We're trying to figure things out, sweetie. It's complicated." Gabriel's eyes filled with confusion and desperation. "It shouldn't be," he said, turning to rush inside, the door slamming behind him. Aurora followed, calling his name, while Grayson stood on the front steps, hands clenched at his sides. The weight of that child's plea thundered in his mind. It was painfully clear Gabriel was trapped between the life he knew and the father. He wanted an internal struggle that reflected the unresolved tension between Grayson and Aurora. And for Gabriel, none of the wealth, promises, or negotiations could ease that ache unless they found a way to truly come together. The weeks rolled on, each day a tightrope walk between personal healing and relentless outside pressure. Word of Grayson's secret child persisted in hushed corridors of the financial world. Frederick Jameson seized the opportunity to claim Grayson was distracted from his responsibilities, planting seeds of doubt among major investors. At the same time, Gabriel's emotional turmoil became more visible. He frequently woke from nightmares, clung to Aurora whenever Grayson was around, then oscillated to moments where he wanted to spend every spare minute with his father. It was a pendulum swing of conflicting emotions, a reflection of a boy's desperate longing for stability. Amid these struggles, Grayson decided to host a small dinner at his penthouse, inviting Aurora, Gabriel, Lydia, and a few close friends who genuinely cared about him as a person, not just a billionaire. His hope was that Gabriel might see a glimpse of how his father lived beyond the cold headlines and grandeur. The penthouse shimmered with tasteful modern art, floor-to-ceiling windows revealing the city in all its nocturnal splendor. Gabriel seemed both awed and intimidated as he ventured inside. "You live so high up," he breathed, peering down at the streets below. Grayson stood behind him, trying to gauge Gabriel's comfort level. "Yeah, I do. But it's also pretty quiet and lonely sometimes." Gabriel's eyes flickered with understanding, as though he suddenly realized even grand towers had their drawbacks. Soon, Lydia joined them, greeting Gabriel with a warm smile and a small gift, an art kit. Aurora arrived moments later, wearing a simple yet elegant dress. She offered Grayson a tense smile of gratitude for arranging the gathering. They sat around a long glass dining table, the city lights winking beyond. Chef-prepared courses arrived, but the atmosphere remained subdued until Lydia broke the ice with stories from her pediatric ward. Gabriel listened intently, occasionally tossing in a question about surgeries, which Lydia answered with child-friendly explanations. As dessert arrived molten chocolate cake, at Gabriel's request, Grayson cleared his throat. There's something I want to say to all of you, especially you, Gabriel," he began, voice unsteady. He turned to face his son. "For most of my life, I believed success was measured by money, buildings, expansions. But I realize now that real success is about love, about being there for the people who matter. You and your mother matter more to me than any skyscraper." Aurora's eyes shimmered with emotion, and Gabriel looked on with a mix of uncertainty and hope. Grayson continued, "I've decided to restructure how I manage my company. I'm appointing someone to oversee some of my responsibilities, so I can spend more time with you. I might even step back from international travel for a while. That's how important you are to me." A stunned silence settled over the table. Then Gabriel stood, pushing his chair back. You mean you won't have to leave me for weeks and weeks?" he asked, tears threatening to spill. Grayson nodded, voice thick with emotion. "If I do travel, we'll figure out a way for us to be together. Or I'll make the trips much shorter. We'll work it out, I promise." It was a grand revelation. Grayson Lockhart, mogul of a billion-dollar empire, was willing to put family above business. And in that moment, as Gabriel threw his arms around his father, Aurora watched with trembling lips. Under the glimmering New York skyline, a fractured family felt the faint stirrings of hope. The decision Grayson made that night set an entirely new course, but the path was anything but smooth. The corporate world reeled at the news that he was delegating major responsibilities to trusted lieutenants. Frederick Jameson launched a vicious campaign to paint Grayson as irresponsible. Grayson's move to step back threatened the stock's stability, spooking some investors. Crisis meetings cropped up almost daily, but Grayson stood firm this time. Family would take precedence. At home, Gabriel remained cautiously optimistic. He beamed whenever Grayson showed up at school events or brought him to Lockhart International's local offices to see architectural models. Yet each time Grayson received a phone call about an urgent deal, Gabriel tensed, afraid his father would revert to old patterns. For Gabriel, trust would need to be built brick by brick. Aurora found herself grappling with her own ambivalence. She had raised her son alone, forging an independent life that balanced artistic passions with motherhood's demands. Seeing Grayson suddenly dedicate himself to fatherhood reignited old wounds. Why hadn't he done this from the start? Could she trust his newfound devotion? Gradually, though, as weeks slipped by, Aurora watched Grayson navigate fatherhood with genuine earnestness. He coached Gabriel through math homework, listened to his dreams of designing entire cities for families who couldn't afford homes, and even joined Aurora at Colorful Dreams Studio to host an art workshop for kids. The sight of Grayson kneeling beside a group of children, teaching them about building shapes and structures, softened Aurora's long-held resentment. Then, on an unseasonably warm Saturday, Grayson invited Aurora and Gabriel to spend the day at the Cloisters, a medieval art museum perched above the Hudson River. Walking among the ancient tapestries and stone arches, Aurora observed how gently Grayson guided Gabriel's curiosity. He encouraged Gabriel to spot design elements from centuries past, praising the boy for his keen eye. Over lunch, at a small outdoor cafe, Aurora mustered the courage to speak. "You've changed," she said quietly. Not accusatory but sincere. "I see it in how you talk to Gabriel, how you handle him. It's different from who you were." Grayson took a moment, gazing at the rippling waters of the Hudson. "I had no idea what love truly meant until now. Money was everything, but it feels empty compared to this. I know I have a lot to atone for, Aurora, but I'm trying." She gave a small nod, her eyes reflecting sadness and gratitude in equal measure. "I appreciate that. I'm scared," she admitted, voice trembling. "I can't lose you again, and Gabriel can't be left behind." "I won't leave," Grayson whispered, his hand reaching out to cover hers. "I promise." They finished their meal in a contemplative silence. The path to forgiveness was winding, strewn with the debris of the past. But each fragile step they took felt like a step closer to a future where the three of them, once fragmented by miscommunication and fear, might find healing. The months that followed marked a profound evolution for each member of this newly forming family. Under Grayson's guidance, Lockhart International's restructuring took shape. Cassandra Park assumed a key role overseeing day-to-day operations, while Grayson focused on strategic decisions that required his vision but not his constant presence. The press initially spun the change as a sign of instability, but soon recognized it as Grayson's plan for sustainable growth. Investors stabilized, and Frederick Jameson's coup attempts faltered as the board recognized Grayson's unwavering leadership. Meanwhile, Aurora found herself leaning on Grayson in ways she never anticipated. When funding shortages threatened Colorful Dream Studio, Grayson offered not just financial support, but also introduced her to prominent philanthropists. Ensuring the studio's programs could expand, he asked for no public recognition, requesting only that Aurora maintain creative control. Their collective efforts led to more children benefiting from art education, a dream Aurora once feared would crumble under financial constraints. Gabriel thrived in this atmosphere of collaborative support. His artwork blossomed. He even won a junior architecture competition for designing a prototype of a community center with accessible rooftop gardens. In the acceptance speech, attended by a small crowd of parents and city officials, Gabriel thanked both his mother and father, voice trembling with pride. Aurora and Grayson stood side by side, their mutual smile resonating with an unspoken understanding of how far they'd come. Still, vestiges of old hurts persisted. Late one evening, after Gabriel had gone to bed, Grayson and Aurora lingered in her living room, sipping tea. The conversation drifted to the hopes and failures of their youth. There, in the softened glow of a single lamp, they admitted regrets, exchanged apologies. They never spoke a decade earlier and allowed themselves to see the love that still lingered beneath the scars. In a moment hushed by the weight of history, Grayson cupped Aurora's cheek. "We can't change the past," he murmured, "but maybe we can learn from it." A tear slipped down Aurora's face. She leaned into his touch, whispering, "I want to try if you're willing." They sealed this renewed pledge with a gentle kiss, a tentative blossom of the love they once had, now tempered by years of hardship and growth. Outside, the moonlight bathed the Brooklyn street in silver, as though bestowing a quiet blessing on the promise they shared. For Gabriel, the next morning brought an unexpected sight, waking up to find both his parents laughing in the kitchen, flipping pancakes as though they had done so together for years. He joined them at the table, greeted by two warm smiles. The unspoken pact was clear, though the journey had been fraught with twists, heartbreak, and near betrayals. They stood on the brink of a new beginning, united by the child whose eyes mirrored his father's and by a love they had once lost but managed, miraculously, to rediscover. Thank you for joining us on this heart-wrenching, inspiring journey into the life of Grayson Lockhart, Aurora Middleton, and their son Gabriel. From the lofty ambitions that once tore two lovers apart to the unexpected discovery that brought them back together, their story reminds us that true wealth is measured not by bank accounts but by love, trust, and second chances. If this tale of hidden secrets, deep regrets, and a child's unwavering hope moved you, please show your support. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more riveting, emotionally charged stories that delve into the human heart. By doing so, you'll never miss an update, and you'll help us continue sharing tales that resonate with the beautiful complexities of real life. Thank you for watching, and may every lost moment in your life find its way to a second chance.